The wind screamed across the barren plains, cutting through the silence of the frontier like a knife. Snowflakes drifted lazily, coating the dry grass and worn fences of the Dawson Ranch. Inside the old wooden barn, the smell of hay, smoke, and survival filled the air. John Dawson, a rugged cowboy with years of hardship etched on his face, was finishing the day's work when his horse, Bandit, whinnied sharply toward the edge of the property. It wasn't just the cold that unsettled him. It was something else, something human. He grabbed his rifle, whistled for his loyal dog, and made his way toward the sound. As he reached the frozen ditch by the old creek, he saw her half buried in snow, skin pale as ice, lips trembling, and eyes barely open. A young woman, no older than 20, in a torn green dress, clutching a worn locket in her frozen fingers. She was dying. John's heart tightened. He had seen enough death in his life to know when someone was close to it. But something in her eyes, a fragile flicker of life, made him kneel down and lift her gently into his arms. The snow crackled under his boots as he carried her back to the barn, his breath heavy in the cold. "Hang in there, miss," he murmured, though he didn't expect her to hear. Inside, he laid her down on fresh hay near the fire pit where a kettle hissed softly. His little daughter, Annie, peeked from behind a stack of barrels, clutching her stuffed bear. "Papa, who is she?" the girl whispered. "Someone who needs help," John replied firmly, throwing another log onto the fire. The woman's skin was cold to the touch. John rubbed her hands and tried to get warmth back into her body. He boiled water, tore one of his own shirts into cloth strips, and pressed them against her forehead. Annie, curious and worried, knelt beside him, her blue eyes wide. "She looks like an angel," she said softly. John forced a small smile. "Then we'll pray the angels don't take her yet." Hours passed. The wind howled. The woman muttered something faintly in her sleep. Names, perhaps memories, and clutched the locket tighter. Inside it, John found a small picture of a man and a baby. His heart stirred uneasily. Whoever she was, she had once belonged somewhere, to someone. But out here in the wilderness, people disappeared every day, swallowed by the world's cruelty. Night fell. The sheriff stopped by, asking about a missing traveler rumored to have fled town after a robbery. John lied without thinking. "Ain't seen no one." When the sheriff left, John looked at the woman again. Her face was too kind, too broken to belong to a thief. He couldn't let them take her if she survived. The snowstorm grew louder, beating against the wooden barn walls. Annie stayed close, humming softly as her father tended the fire. Around midnight, the woman opened her eyes for the first time. They were a deep gray, clouded with confusion and fear. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "Where am I?" John leaned closer. "Safe now." "You're safe, ma'am. Rest easy." Tears formed in her eyes as she whispered, "Thank you for not leaving me." Then she drifted back into sleep. John sat quietly, staring into the fire, wondering why fate had dropped this stranger at his doorstep. He didn't know her story yet, but something inside him, something long buried, told him that this encounter would change everything. Outside, the snow kept falling, but inside that barn, a spark of life refused to die. By morning, the storm had passed, but the world outside was painted white and silent. The woman slept peacefully for the first time, her color slowly returning. John brewed coffee and stared at her from across the barn. Something about her face tugged at old memories he had tried to bury since his wife Mary died 3 winters ago during childbirth. He had buried that pain deep within him, raising Annie alone, never expecting another soul to enter their lives. Yet now here lay a woman who stirred the same ache, the same tenderness he thought had died with Mary. Annie sat beside the sleeping woman, gently brushing her golden hair. "Papa," she said, "she looks just like Mama in my dream." John froze mid-step. He'd heard his daughter talk in her sleep before about angels and a woman calling her name, but this time, her voice carried a strange certainty. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" he asked softly. Annie smiled faintly. "In my dream, Mama said she'd come back when we needed her most. And now she's here." John wanted to dismiss it as a child's imagination, but something inside him couldn't. When the woman woke again later that day, she tried to sit up but winced in pain. "Don't move too fast," John cautioned. "You've been half frozen." She nodded weakly, clutching the blanket. "My name's Eliza," she whispered. "I was traveling west. My carriage overturned near the river. They took everything. I thought I'd die there. John listened, his eyes dark with concern. You would have if not for Annie. Eliza turned to the little girl who offered her a shy smile. Thank you, sweetheart, she said softly. Annie tilted her head and whispered something almost too quiet to hear. You're our mama. John's heart skipped a beat. Eliza's eyes widened, shimmering with sudden emotion. What did you say, dear? Annie repeated. Mama sent you back to us. For a long moment no one spoke. The only sound was the crackle of the fire. Tears filled Eliza's eyes as she reached out, trembling. I lost a child, she murmured. A baby girl. Years ago. Her voice broke. She was taken from me after her father died. I never stopped praying I'd find her. She looked into Annie's face, and John saw something undeniable. The same locket she had, clutched in the snow, now matched. The one he kept hidden in his coat. His late wife's locket, the one she said belonged to a sister she never found. John's breath caught. The truth hit like lightning. Eliza wasn't a stranger. She was Mary's long-lost sister. Annie wasn't wrong when she said, Mama sent you. Eliza broke into quiet sobs as John held her hand. The weight of years of pain lifting in that one moment. Days turned to weeks. Eliza healed. And the barn that once felt like a place of loneliness now echoed with laughter again. She helped with the horses, cooked simple meals, and sang to Annie by the fire. When spring came, John realized he couldn't imagine the ranch without her. The sheriff eventually returned, but this time John didn't hide the truth. She belongs here, he said firmly. And she did. One evening, as the sun dipped below the plains, Annie looked up at the sky and whispered, Mama kept her promise. Eliza smiled and hugged her tight. John stood by the door, tipping his hat, eyes glistening with gratitude for the miracle that began with a stranger in the snow and ended with a family reborn.